My name is Eloise, a 32-year-old senior software developer with 10 years of industry experience. I specialize in AI and machine learning algorithms that can predict consumer behavior with scary accuracy. For 18 months, I poured my heart and soul into building a revolutionary product only to be blindsided by betrayal days before the biggest launch of my career. When the VP whispered, "Thanks for all the code," as he fired me, he had no idea I had left a little pizza surprise in the system. Before I dive into this wild story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to catch more workplace revenge tales like this one. Computers have been my passion since I was 12 years old. While other kids were obsessing over boy bands and makeup, I was learning my first programming language and building simple games. My parents bought me my first computer when I was 13, and I spent countless hours taking it apart, putting it back together, and writing increasingly complex code. By the time I reached high school, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. Getting into MIT was a dream come true. Though the gender ratio was discouraging with less than 30% women in my computer science program, I thrived on the challenge. I graduated with honors and landed a job at a respectable tech company. But after 5 years, the work became predictable and uninspiring. I was maintaining systems, not creating them. Each day felt like a carbon copy of the one before. Then came the email that changed everything. A recruiter from Algorithm X reached out about a position that seemed tailor-made for my skills. Algorithm X was a hot startup, developing an AI platform that could predict consumer behavior with unprecedented accuracy. During the interview, they showed me prototypes that made my programmer brain light up with possibilities. When they offered me the position of senior developer with the chance to build something revolutionary from the ground up, I accepted without hesitation. The early days at Algorithm X were everything I hoped they would be. Our team was small but brilliant, 5 developers, including me, each bringing unique strengths to the table. We worked long hours, but it never felt like work. We were creating something that could potentially transform the entire industry. Within 6 months, I was promoted to lead developer, managing the team and reporting directly to the Chief Technology Officer, Thomas. The atmosphere felt like family. We celebrated birthdays with cupcakes in the break room, helped each other move apartments on weekends, and genuinely cared about one another as people, not just colleagues. Our shared vision of creating something revolutionary bonded us in a way I had never experienced before. Jamie, another developer who joined around the same time I did, became my closest friend at Algorithm X. We would often stay late together, troubleshooting code and bouncing ideas off each other. Jamie was the first person I called when I had a breakthrough or hit a seemingly insurmountable roadblock. Our complementary skills made us a formidable team. Everything changed the day Marcus joined as Vice President of Product Development. He came with an impressive resume from one of the major tech giants. The CEO introduced him as the experienced leader who would help take our product to market. Marcus was tall, impeccably dressed, and radiated confidence with his firm handshake and direct eye contact. He seemed charming and said all the right things in his introduction email about being excited to work with such a talented team. But something about him felt off from the beginning, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The first warning sign came during our initial team meeting with Marcus present. As I was explaining the core architecture of our AI system, he interrupted me multiple times to clarify points I had already made clear. When I demonstrated a new feature we had developed, he redirected the conversation to how it would be marketed, rather than acknowledging the technical achievement. By the end of that meeting, I felt strangely undermined, though nothing explicitly inappropriate had occurred. Within weeks, Marcus began holding separate meetings with my team members without including me. When I asked about it casually, he explained they were just marketing alignment discussions, but Jamie later told me they went far beyond marketing into technical decisions that should have involved me. Gradually, Marcus positioned himself between me and upper management. Reports I used to deliver directly to Thomas now had to go through Marcus first. My access to the CEO was suddenly limited by a barrage of new protocols. The isolation tactics were subtle but effective. Meeting invitations arrived last minute when I had immovable conflicts. My feedback was solicited after decisions had already been finalized. My name was listed last on project documentation when I had contributed most of the code. Each incident seemed minor in isolation, easily dismissed as an oversight, but together, they formed a pattern I could not ignore. Despite growing discomfort, my determination to see our project succeed overrode my personal concerns. This was the most exciting work I had ever done, and I refused to let office politics derail my contribution. I invested everything in this project, missing family gatherings, working weekends, and even skipping my best friend's wedding to meet critical deadlines. My apartment became little more than a place to sleep between coding sessions. My refrigerator contained nothing but energy drinks and takeout leftovers. The breakthrough came after months of relentless work. I developed an algorithm that could predict consumer behavior with 98% accuracy using minimal data points, significantly outperforming anything else on the market. This algorithm became the core of our product, the thing that set us apart from competitors. I documented my work meticulously, ran thousands of tests to verify its reliability, and optimized the code until it ran with remarkable efficiency. As the launch date approached, the workplace tension intensified, but so did my excitement. After all the sacrifices and hard work, I would finally see our product reach the market. I dreamed of the recognition that would follow a successful launch, possibly even a promotion to a more senior role. More than that, I longed for validation that the personal cost had been worth it, that my contribution mattered. Little did I know that Marcus had other plans entirely. 6 months before our scheduled launch, we held a critical meeting with potential investors. The conference room was filled with venture capitalists in expensive suits, all eager to see what Algorithm X had developed. Marcus took center stage, presenting our progress with the confidence of someone who had built the product himself. When he reached the slide about our core prediction algorithm, my algorithm, he described it as our revolutionary approach without mentioning my name or contribution. One investor asked a detailed technical question about how we had overcome a particular challenge in machine learning bias. Rather than answering directly, Marcus smoothly said, "That's an excellent question. Eloise, would you mind addressing that?" All eyes turned to me. I explained the solution I had developed, only to have Marcus quickly retake control of the conversation with, "As Eloise mentioned, our team found a creative solution to that problem." Our team. Not my solution. After the meeting, the CEO sent a congratulatory email to Marcus that was forwarded to the entire development team. "Fantastic presentation today, Marcus. The investors were extremely impressed with the technology you've developed. Looking forward to seeing the final product." The technology he had developed. I stared at those words on my screen for a full minute, feeling a knot form in my stomach. The next morning, I gathered my courage and knocked on Marcus's office door. He welcomed me in with his practiced smile. "Eloise, what can I do for you today?" "I wanted to talk about yesterday's investor meeting." I began, keeping my tone professional. "I noticed that my contribution to the core algorithm wasn't acknowledged." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his smile never wavering. "We're a team, Eloise. Does it really matter who gets credit? As long as we're moving toward a successful launch?" "I believe credit should go where it's due," I persisted. "That algorithm represents months of my work." "I understand you feel strongly about this," he replied, his tone subtly shifting to something more patronizing. "But in leadership positions, we have to focus on the big picture. Individual credit is less important than company success." The conversation ended there, with nothing resolved and the distinct impression that raising the issue had only damaged my standing with him. The pattern continued. Marcus would schedule important architecture review meetings during my standing, one-on-one with Thomas, forcing me to choose between the two. He would request comprehensive reports with impossible turnaround times, then criticize their quality when I delivered them under pressure. During one critical development meeting 3 months before launch, I raised concerns about a potential security vulnerability in our user authentication system. We should implement a multi-factor authentication option before launch, I explained, providing detailed documentation of the vulnerability and my proposed solution. Marcus dismissed the concern as over-engineering that would delay our timeline and potentially confuse users. "We can always add that in version 2, if it proves necessary," he concluded, effectively ending the discussion. I documented my recommendation in detailed technical notes and follow-up emails, copying Thomas and the security team, wanting a record of my concerns. 2 weeks later, Marcus called an emergency meeting with the development team and security. "I've been reviewing our authentication protocols," he announced gravely, and I've identified a potential security issue we need to address immediately." He proceeded to present my exact solution as his breakthrough idea, complete with the same implementation approach I had detailed in my documentation. Jamie shot me a look of disbelief across the table, but I kept my face carefully neutral as Marcus was praised for his foresight. After that meeting, team members began approaching me privately. Jamie was the first catching me alone in the break room. "We all see what he's doing, Eloise," Jamie said quietly. "The way he's taking credit for your work, isolating you from the rest of us. It's not right, but what can we do? He's the VP." "I'm going to talk to Thomas," I decided. "The CTO should know what's happening." But scheduling a meeting with Thomas became an exercise in futility. His assistant would confirm a time only to reschedule at the last minute because something urgent came up with Marcus. When I did manage to get 10 minutes with him, Marcus would find a reason to join the meeting, dominating the conversation until my time was up. The stress began taking a physical toll. I developed insomnia, lying awake rehearsing confrontations that never happened. I lost weight as my appetite diminished, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. Dark circles formed permanent residences under my eyes. My friends outside of work expressed concern, but I brushed it off as normal launch pressure. I couldn't admit even to myself how bad things had gotten. As the deadline pressure intensified, Marcus began criticizing my work publicly in meetings. The module Eloise delivered is underperforming in stress tests, he would announce, without providing me the test results beforehand or a chance to address the issues privately. Or, "We're going to need to rework Eloise's user interface. It's not meeting our usability standards." These criticisms were always vague enough that I couldn't directly challenge them, but specific enough to cast doubt on my competence. The final straw came when Samantha, a junior developer on my team, approached me after hours, looking nervously over her shoulder. "You need to see this," she whispered, sliding a folder across my desk. Inside were copies of my performance reports with Marcus's edits tracked. Where I had documented specific achievements and contributions, Marcus had inserted phrases like struggles to meet deadlines and resistant to feedback. The evidence of his sabotage was right there in red and blue, systematic and deliberate. That weekend I made 2 decisions. First, I would document everything meticulously going forward, every contribution, every line of code with timestamps and witnesses where possible. Second, I wouldn't quit. This was my project too, perhaps more mine than anyone's, and I wouldn't abandon it without a fight. I spent Saturday and Sunday creating a comprehensive document of my contributions backed by commit logs, meeting notes, and email trails. I stored it both on my personal device and in an encrypted cloud account. It felt both empowering and deeply sad to compile evidence against my own company, but my instincts told me I would need it someday. I just didn't realize how soon that day would come. 10 days before our scheduled launch disaster struck, a critical bug emerged during final testing that could crash the entire system when multiple users perform certain actions simultaneously. The issue threatened not just our timeline, but the fundamental viability of our product. An emergency meeting was called on Friday afternoon with the entire development team looking grim as the quality assurance lead detailed the problem. "How long will it take to fix?" the CEO asked, his face tight with concern. Before I could respond, Marcus stepped in. "At least a week, possibly 2. We might need to delay the launch." The CEO's expression darkened further at this news. Investor demonstrations were already scheduled, press releases drafted, and the board was expecting a successful launch on time. A delay would be catastrophic for the company's reputation and funding prospects. I raised my hand. "I think I can fix it in 2 days. 3 at most." All eyes turned to me with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Marcus frowned. "That's not realistic given the complexity of the issue." I wrote most of the affected code, I countered. "I know where to look." After some debate, the CEO authorized me to try with a status update expected Monday morning. What I didn't mention was that my best friend's wedding was that weekend, an event I had promised I wouldn't miss after already canceling on 3 other major life events due to work. I called her that evening to deliver the news that I wouldn't be there. Her disappointment was palpable, but she understood the stakes. "Just promise me you'll stand up for yourself after this launch," she said. "You've given them too much already." I canceled my flight and set up camp in my apartment, surrounded by energy drinks, takeout containers, and multiple monitors. The bug was even more complex than initially apparent, intertwined with several core system components. I worked straight through Friday night into Saturday morning, catching a few hours of sleep before diving back in. By Sunday afternoon, my eyes burned from staring at code, and my back ached from hunching over my keyboard, but I was making progress. Jamie, knowing what I was sacrificing, checked in periodically via text, and even dropped off homemade food at one point. "You're a coding machine, but even machines need fuel," Jamie joked, looking concerned at my disheveled appearance. At 11:30 Sunday night, after 36 hours of intensive debugging, sustained primarily by caffeine and determination, I identified the root cause and implemented a fix. After running a comprehensive battery of tests that all passed, I committed the changes to our development branch and wrote detailed documentation explaining the solution. I sent an email to the team announcing the fix, then collapsed into bed for a few precious hours of sleep before Monday's status meeting. I arrived at the office early Monday morning, exhausted but proud of what I'd accomplished. The quality assurance team confirmed my fix had resolved the issue completely. I expected recognition, or at least acknowledgement, of the personal sacrifice I had made to keep our launch on track. Instead, Marcus began the morning meeting with a stern expression. "While we've addressed the immediate issue, I'm concerned about the code quality in the core module that allowed this bug to manifest in the first place," he stated, looking directly at me. I was stunned. The bug was in an edge case that only appeared under very specific load conditions. I explained, pulling up my documentation. It wasn't a result of poor code quality. In fact, I've added additional safeguards to prevent similar issues in the future. Marcus cut me off before I could finish. "We'll discuss this in private, Eloise. For now, let's focus on the remaining launch preparations." The room fell uncomfortably silent. My teammates avoided eye contact, staring at their laptops or notepads. No one spoke up in my defense, though Jamie shot me a sympathetic look when Marcus wasn't watching. Later that afternoon, Marcus's assistant messaged me. "Marcus would like to see you in his office at 4:30. The formality of the message sent a chill through me. I spent the intervening hours mentally preparing my defense of my work and contributions, gathering documentation on my laptop to support my points. At precisely 4:30, I knocked on Marcus's door. His office had a glass wall facing the development floor, but he closed the blinds after I entered, something he rarely did during regular meetings. The CEO's executive assistant was present, along with a representative from Human Resources. My stomach dropped at the sight of them. Marcus didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Eloise, we've been monitoring your performance for some time now, and we're concerned about your fit with the team and the company culture." What followed was a calculated speech about communication issues and resistance to feedback that sounded rehearsed and generic. He cited examples of problems that had been manufactured or exaggerated, referencing the altered performance reports I had seen. As he spoke, I realized with growing horror that this had been his plan all along, that he had been systematically building a case against me for weeks. "Given these ongoing concerns, today will be your last day at Algorithm X," Marcus concluded, sliding termination papers across the desk toward me. As I sat frozen in shock, he leaned forward with a cold smile and whispered, "Thanks for all the code." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. He had wanted my work, not me. He had isolated me, undermined me, and now removed me, all to claim credit for what I had built. The project I had sacrificed so much for would launch without me, with Marcus positioned to receive all the recognition. The Human Resources representative explained the terms of my termination, mentioning something about 2 weeks of severance pay and the immediate surrender of all company property. I barely heard her through the ringing in my ears. When she finished, Marcus called security to escort me out. "Is that really necessary?" I asked, finding my voice at last. "Standard procedure for technical staff," Marcus replied smoothly. "I'm sure you understand." 2 security guards arrived to accompany me to my desk, where I was given just 15 minutes to pack personal items into a cardboard box. My teammates watched in stunned silence as I disconnected my monitor and emptied my drawers under supervision. Jamie tried to approach but was warned away by one of the guards. No communication with current employees during exit proceedings. I held my head high as I walked past staring colleagues to the elevator, but inside I was crumbling. The doors closed on my career at Algorithm X, and I stood rigid until I reached the lobby, clutching my box of belongings like a shield. The drive home passed in a blur. I parked in my assigned spot, carried my box of office mementos up to my apartment, and set it down carefully on the kitchen counter. Only then, surrounded by the quiet of my home, did the reality of what had happened hit me. I sank to the floor, surrounded by conference badges, company t-shirts, and framed photos of the team in happier times, and broke down completely. Everything I had worked for, sacrificed for, was gone in an instant, stolen by someone who had planned my downfall from the beginning. The first 48 hours after my firing passed in a fog of grief, anger, and helplessness. I alternated between crying jags so intense they left me gasping for breath and periods of numb disbelief where I stared at the wall for hours. I didn't eat, barely slept, and ignored calls from concerned friends who had heard rumors about my sudden departure. On the second evening, I finally called my parents. My father, a retired engineering professor who had encouraged my love of computers from the beginning, listened quietly as I sobbed through the story. "This isn't the end of your career, sweetheart," he said when I finished. "It's a detour, not a dead end." My mother was more practical. "Have you spoken to an attorney? This sounds like wrongful termination." I considered legal action, but the prospect of a prolonged battle against a well-funded startup with a team of lawyers was daunting. Besides, what would I gain? Even if I won, my reputation in the industry might be tarnished by a public legal fight. Silicon Valley was smaller than it appeared from the outside, and word traveled fast. Friends from outside the tech world tried to comfort me, but they couldn't fully grasp the magnitude of the loss. "You'll find another job," they said, or, "at least you have that severance pay." They meant well, but they didn't understand that I had lost more than employment. I had lost a creation, something I had built from nothing, something that had my DNA in every line of code. On the third night after my firing, unable to sleep once again, I opened my laptop out of habit. Staring at the screen, a realization slowly dawned on me in the chaos of my termination. They might not have revoked all my access credentials immediately. Most companies had protocols for this. But in my experience, implementation was often inconsistent, especially for administrative access to development servers that weren't directly connected to email or VPN systems. With trembling fingers, I attempted to log into the development server using my admin credentials. To my shock, the system accepted them. I was in. My heart raced as I navigated through the familiar directory structure, seeing the codebase I had spent the last year and a half building. It was all there, including my recent bug fix. I told myself I was just checking, just confirming that my work was still intact. But as I explored further, anger replaced my initial surprise. Marcus had already begun removing my name from key documentation. Commit messages that had originally credited me had been edited to obscure my contributions. In the release notes being prepared for launch, my name didn't appear once, while Marcus was credited as the architect of the core prediction algorithm. The final straw was discovering an internal email to the executive team where Marcus took credit for fixing the critical bug over the weekend, describing in detail the personal sacrifice he had made to save the launch timeline. He had even included technical details from my documentation, barely paraphrased, presenting them as his own insights. The email concluded by suggesting the successful bug fix demonstrated his technical leadership and commitment to the company's success. I sat back in my chair, a cold fury replacing the despair of the previous days. The injustice was so blatant, so complete, that something inside me shifted. I had always played by the rules, worked within the system, believed that merit would ultimately be recognized. But Marcus had shown me the naivety of that belief. He had taken everything from me and would suffer no consequences. In fact, he would be rewarded for it. Absently, I reached for the cold pizza box sitting on my coffee table, a remnant of the delivery I had ordered earlier but barely touched. As I mechanically took a bite, an idea began to form. Not a plan for justice through official channels, which had already failed me, but something more direct. Something that would expose Marcus for what he was at the most critical moment possible. I spent the next hour researching the legal implications of what I was considering. Unauthorized access to a computer system was a federal offense under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. But I wasn't planning to steal data, destroy functionality, or compromise user information. I was thinking of something more symbolic, something that would make a point without causing permanent damage. Something that existed in a gray area legally, but would be undeniably effective. The plan crystallized as I finished my now cold pizza. I would create a special feature that would only activate during the investor demonstration, replacing the interface with something impossible to ignore, but ultimately harmless. It would be my signature, my way of saying I was here without permanently damaging the product I had worked so hard to build. I started by taking a picture of my half-eaten pizza, then used a graphics program to create a simple animated GIF of it spinning against a black background. I added text that read "Credit where credit is due" in bold white letters, simple but unmistakable in its message. Next came the technical implementation. I needed something subtle enough to avoid detection in standard testing, but reliable enough to trigger exactly when needed. I knew the demonstration pathway through the application, intimately having helped design it specifically for the launch presentation. I embedded my trigger in that pathway, making it activate specifically when demonstrating the core prediction algorithm, the very feature Marcus had most blatantly stolen from me. The code itself was a work of art disguised as routine error handling but containing a conditional trigger based on specific demonstration parameters. I obscured it further by distributing components across multiple modules, making it difficult to find or fix quickly without intimate knowledge of the system architecture. Only I would know exactly where to look and what to change to deactivate it. I took precautions to ensure my modification wouldn't affect actual customer data or functionality. If the system detected real user data, rather than the demonstration dataset, my code would remain dormant. My target was Marcus and his moment of glory, not the company's actual customers or the viability of the product itself. As an additional safeguard, I built in a contingency. The pizza feature would automatically deactivate after 24 hours, or immediately if a specific command was entered, a command only I knew. This was my insurance policy, my way of maintaining some control over the situation no matter how it unfolded. To cover my tracks, I set up a VPN to mask my IP address before implementing the code. I made the changes during the early morning hours when system activity was minimal and monitoring was least attentive. I worked with methodical precision, double-checking every line to ensure nothing could be traced back to my home network. When I finally committed the changes at 4 a.m, I felt a mixture of emotions, guilt at potentially disrupting a product I still cared about, satisfaction at the prospect of Marcus facing public humiliation, and fear of the possible consequences. But beneath it all was a sense of reclaiming some measure of power in a situation where I had been rendered powerless. In the days leading up to the launch, I refreshed tech news sites, constantly looking for any indication that my modification had been discovered. I monitored the company's official social media accounts and the personal accounts of team members I knew. Everything proceeded as planned, with growing industry buzz about the revolutionary AI platform about to be unveiled. The night before the launch, I received a text from Jamie. "The launch is tomorrow. Wish you were here. It doesn't feel right without you." I stared at those words for a long time, wondering if I should warn Jamie about what was coming. In the end, I simply replied, "Thank you. Good luck tomorrow." Better for Jamie to have plausible deniability when the chaos erupted. I barely slept that night, alternating between second thoughts and grim determination. By morning, it was too late to change course. The demonstration was scheduled for 10 a.m. Pacific time. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back. Launch day arrived with fanfare across tech publications. Algorithm X had generated significant buzz in the industry, with analysts predicting their AI platform could potentially disrupt the entire market. Major outlets had published preview articles with quotes from Marcus about the revolutionary technology his team had developed. My name was conspicuously absent from all coverage. I set up multiple screens in my living room, my laptop to watch the live stream of the presentation, my tablet to monitor social media reactions, and my phone to keep an eye on any messages from former colleagues. I made coffee, though I hardly needed the caffeine given the adrenaline already coursing through my system. My hands shook slightly as I navigated to the live stream link. The feed went live at 9:55, showing the venue filling with attendees. I recognized several prominent tech journalists in the front rows. Representatives from major investment firms scattered throughout the audience, and even executives from companies that would be potential clients or acquirers. Algorithm X had assembled an impressive audience for their moment of triumph. At precisely 10 o'clock, the CEO took the stage to enthusiastic applause. He was charismatic and polished as he welcomed the audience and gave a brief overview of the company's mission to transform predictive analytics. Today, he proclaimed, we're not just launching a product, we're launching a new era in consumer prediction technology. And to tell you more about this breakthrough, I'd like to introduce our Vice President of Product Development, Marcus Winters. Marcus strode onto the stage confidently dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that had probably cost more than my monthly rent. His hair was perfectly styled, his smile practiced and winning. The audience applauded again as he took position at center stage, a large display screen behind him showing the Algorithm X logo. Thank you all for being here for this historic moment, Marcus began. Over the past 2 years, our team has been working tirelessly to solve one of the most challenging problems in artificial intelligence, truly accurate prediction of consumer behavior with minimal data points. I clenched my jaw as he continued describing the journey to build this incredible product without acknowledging the real architects of the system. He presented impressive statistics about the platform's performance charts, showing its superiority over competitors and testimonials from beta testers who had been amazed by the results. Throughout his presentation, he used phrases like my team and our approach, but never mentioned specific contributors. My name wasn't spoken once. As Marcus approached the demonstration portion, my heart began racing. This was the moment of truth. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, he said, moving to a podium with a built-in computer. Let me show you exactly how the Algorithm X platform will transform your business. The giant screen behind him transitioned from slides to a live view of the platform interface. It was sleek and professional, exactly as I had designed it months ago. Marcus narrated as he navigated through the initial screens, explaining the setup process and data integration capabilities. The audience watched attentively, many taking notes or recording the demonstration on their phones. The real magic happens when we apply our proprietary prediction algorithm, Marcus explained, reaching the crucial juncture in the demonstration. He clicked the button labeled Generate Predictions, the very trigger I had been waiting for. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, instead of the expected visualization of consumer behavior patterns, the screen filled with my spinning pizza. GIF the words, credit, where credit is due, rotating along with it. The pizza spun hypnotically against the black background, filling the massive display behind Marcus, who continued talking for several seconds before realizing something was wrong. The audience's initial reaction was confused laughter, assuming this was an intentional joke or perhaps a creative metaphor about consumer preferences. Marcus turned to look at the screen, his smile freezing in place, as he realized this was definitely not part of the planned presentation. We appear to be experiencing a small technical glitch, he said, his voice tight, as he clicked frantically to proceed to the next screen, but every click only resulted in the pizza spinning faster, the message growing larger. If you'll bear with me for just a moment. The confused murmurs in the audience grew louder as the seconds stretched into a full minute with no change. Marcus's forced smile began to crack around the edges as panic set in. He tried different commands, different screens, even attempted to restart the application, but the pizza remained spinning relentlessly on every display. The awkward silence spread through the audience as realization dawned that this was not a momentary glitch but a significant malfunction. Investors began whispering to each other, some looking concerned, others barely concealing their amusement at the unexpected turn of events. The CEO rushed on stage, still trying to maintain a professional demeanor. While our technical team addresses this minor issue, perhaps we can move to the Q&A portion of our presentation. I'm sure you have questions about the platform's capabilities. But it was too late to salvage the moment. All eyes remained fixed on the spinning pizza that had replaced their revolutionary product. Several journalists had already taken out their phones, no doubt, tweeting about the demonstration disaster in real time. After a few more excruciating minutes, the live stream suddenly cut to a screen reading technical difficulties. Please stand by. In the brief moment before the feed was cut, I glimpsed frantic activity behind Marcus with the CTO and several developers huddled around a laptop, their expressions grave. My phone immediately began buzzing with messages from former colleagues. Most were variations of what's happening and did you see this? But Jamie's message was more direct. Oh my God, what did you do? I didn't respond to any of them, instead switching my focus to Twitter, where number Pizzagate and number Algorithm X fail were already trending. Tech reporters were posting real-time updates. Algorithm X demo crashes and burns with spinning pizza. Number tech fail. Millions in funding, years of development, and all we get is pizza, not even the good kind. Number Algorithm X fail. Someone in Algorithm X's IT department is getting fired today. Oh wait, that last one made me wince. How quickly would they connect this to my recent firing? I refreshed my financial app to see Algorithm X's stock price, which had been climbing steadily in anticipation of the launch. It had already dropped 6% and was continuing to fall as investors reacted to the public relations nightmare unfolding live. After about 10 minutes, the live stream resumed. The CEO stood alone on stage, his previous enthusiasm replaced by controlled damage control mode. We apologize for the technical issue during our demonstration. Our team is working to resolve it, and we expect to have a fully functional demonstration available later today. In the meantime, let me tell you more about the transformative potential of our platform. But the damage was done. The audience was distracted, many people looking at their phones rather than paying attention to the CEO's attempts to salvage the presentation. In the background, I could see Marcus gesticulating angrily toward the technical team, who were still clustered around laptops. The camera briefly panned to show the CTO Thomas examining code on a laptop surrounded by developers. His face had gone pale as he scrolled through what I assumed was my carefully crafted intervention. Even from the poor quality live stream, I could see the moment of realization dawn on his face. He knew this wasn't a random glitch or a simple bug. This was deliberate. The CEO tried valiantly to continue the presentation, but without a working demonstration, his claims about the platform's revolutionary capabilities fell flat. He eventually abbreviated his remarks and opened the floor for questions, most of which focused on whether the platform actually worked, rather than its features or benefits. As the disastrous event wound down, my phone rang with an unknown number showing the company's area code. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. And again. After the fourth call, a text message appeared from Thomas's personal number, which I had from company events. "We know it was you. CEO wants to talk. Now." I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen. This was the moment of decision. I could ignore them, completely disappear from their radar, and start looking for a new job in a different city. Or I could answer and face the consequences of my actions, whatever they might be. The phone rang again. This time I picked up. "Hello," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Eloise." It was Thomas, his normally calm voice strained. "We need you to come to the office. Immediately." "I'm not sure that's a good idea considering how I was escorted out last week." I replied, surprised by how calm I sounded. "This isn't a request," he said. "The CEO is prepared to involve legal authorities if necessary. But we'd all prefer to handle this internally." The implied threat hung in the air between us. After a moment, I said, "I'll be there in 30 minutes. During the drive to the Algorithm X office, I rehearsed what I would say. I wouldn't deny responsibility, but I wouldn't apologize either. I had documented evidence of what Marcus had done, and I was prepared to use it. If they wanted to pursue legal action against me, I would ensure Marcus faced consequences as well. The familiar glass and steel building came into view, the company logo illuminated against the morning sunday. Just a week ago, I had badge access to every door. Now I had to stop at the security desk as a visitor. The guard's eyebrows shot up when I gave my name. "Miss Bennett, I, need to check with upstairs." He stammered clearly, recognizing me, but confused by my presence after my dramatic exit. A few minutes later, a different security officer arrived to escort me upstairs, his expression carefully neutral. In the elevator, employees from marketing and sales stared openly, whispering to each other. News of the demonstration disaster had clearly spread throughout the company, and my sudden reappearance was adding fuel to the fire. Walking through the open office was surreal. All conversation ceased as I passed every eye following my progress. Some expressions were curious, others sympathetic, a few openly hostile. I kept my gaze forward, chin high, though my stomach churned with anxiety. As we passed the development area, I caught Jamie's eye. While others looked away when I made eye contact, Jamie held my gaze and gave me a subtle thumbs up. That small gesture of solidarity strengthened my resolve as we approached the executive boardroom. The security officer opened the door without knocking. Inside, the CEO stood looking out the window, his back rigid with tension. Thomas sat at the conference table, a laptop open in front of him, and Marcus paced near the whiteboard, his perfect suit now rumpled, his carefully styled hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. All three men turned as I entered. The CEO's face was a mask of controlled anger. Thomas looked exhausted and conflicted. But it was Marcus's expression that caught me off guard, a mixture of rage and fear that made him almost unrecognizable from the smooth operator who had fired me just days ago. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" the CEO asked, without preamble, his voice low and dangerous. Before I could respond, Marcus stepped forward. "This is corporate sabotage, plain and simple. We should call the police right now and press charges. She accessed our systems illegally after termination." I remained calm, setting my bag on the table and removing a manila folder. "Before we discuss the pizza, let's discuss this documentation." I placed the folder on the table and slid it toward Thomas, who seemed the most rational person in the room. "This contains evidence of systematic intellectual theft and workplace sabotage, not by me but by Marcus. Email threads, commit logs, altered performance reviews, witnesses willing to testify, and documentation of my actual contributions to the platform." Thomas opened the folder and began reviewing the contents, his expression growing more troubled with each page he turned. Marcus immediately went on the offensive. "This is absurd. She's clearly fabricated evidence to justify her actions. These are the desperate maneuvers of a disgruntled employee who couldn't handle constructive feedback. Every document in that folder has metadata, timestamps, and digital signatures that can be verified," I replied evenly. "And I'm not the only one with copies. I've provided similar documentation to several trusted third parties to be released if any legal action is taken against me." This was a bluff, but a calculated one. I had indeed backed up all my evidence, but I hadn't actually distributed it yet. The uncertainty would make them think twice about pursuing charges. The CEO looked from me to Marcus, then to Thomas, who was still examining the documents. "Thomas, your assessment." Thomas looked up, his technical mind having already processed the implications. "The documentation appears authentic, and it aligns with certain inconsistencies I had noticed, but hadn't fully connected." He turned to Marcus. "Did you really present Eloise's security enhancement as your own idea, after rejecting it in a team meeting?" Marcus's face flushed. "That's a gross mischaracterization of what happened." "And the critical bug fix the weekend before launch," Thomas continued, holding up an email printout. "You took credit for that explicitly, but server logs would show it was Eloise who was logged in throughout that weekend, not you." The CEO sat down heavily, the full implications of the situation dawning on him. Not only had his company's launch been publicly derailed, but he now faced the possibility that his VP of product development had been systematically undermining and taking credit for the work of the platform's primary architect. "The pizza," the CEO said, finally returning to the immediate crisis. "How do we fix it?" "The code will reset at midnight," I explained, "but the investors won't wait that long. You've already lost momentum and credibility with today's failure." "Can you remove it immediately?" the CEO asked, his anger now tempered with pragmatism. "I can," I confirmed, "but I have conditions." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "This is extortion. We don't negotiate with someone who deliberately sabotaged our launch." The CEO silenced him with a look before turning back to me. "Your conditions. Full credit for my work documented and public. Marcus removed from any position of authority over me or my code, and compensation for wrongful termination, including lost wages and damages to my professional reputation." "It's her or me," Marcus declared, attempting to reassert control. "If you capitulate to this saboteur, I'll resign immediately." The CEO's face remained impassive as he evaluated his options. The company was in a precarious position. The failed demonstration had already damaged their reputation with investors and potential customers. Every minute, the platform remained non-functional, represented thousands of dollars in potential lost revenue and investment. And now he had evidence that one of his top executives had potentially created this vulnerability through his own unethical behavior. Thomas broke the tense silence. For what it's worth, Eloise's code quality and innovation were consistently excellent. The core prediction algorithm, which is the heart of our platform, is primarily her work. It would take months to replace that expertise. The CEO nodded slowly, then turned to me. I'd like to speak with you privately, Eloise. Marcus began to protest, but the CEO cut him off. Thomas, please take Marcus to your office while I discuss this with Eloise. Once we were alone, the CEO's demeanor changed subtly. The corporate mask slipped, revealing a tired man facing a crisis he hadn't anticipated. Off the record, Eloise, I need to understand what really happened here. For the next 20 minutes, I walked him through the events of the past 6 months. From my perspective, not as accusations, but as my lived experience. I showed him specific examples of how Marcus had systematically undermined and isolated me, then claimed credit for my work. I explained how my attempts to address the situation through proper channels had been blocked at every turn. The CEO listened without interrupting occasionally, making notes or asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he sat back with a sigh. I should have seen this sooner. There were warning signs I ignored because the platform development seemed to be progressing well. Marcus is very good at managing appearances, I acknowledged. But your method of bringing this to light, he said carefully, has created a significant problem for the company. One that could impact everyone who works here, not just Marcus. I recognize that, I admitted. And I'm not proud of how I handled it. But after being fired and escorted out by security, what institutional recourse did I have left? He nodded slowly, conceding the point. So where do we go from here? What would it take to resolve this situation constructively for all parties? We spent the next half hour negotiating terms that would allow me to return to the company while saving face for the organization. The conversation was frank and pragmatic, focused on finding a workable solution rather than assigning blame. By the end, we had outlined an agreement that addressed my core concerns while providing a path forward for the company. As we were finalizing details, the door burst open without warning. Marcus stormed in, his face contorted with anger. I've just been informed by legal that if we admit any wrongdoing in Eloise's termination, we open ourselves to significant liability. Furthermore, if she accessed our systems without authorization after termination, that's a criminal offense regardless of her grievances. He turned to me with undisguised hostility. Fix the demo or face charges. Those are your only options. The CEO checked his watch, aware that investors were still waiting downstairs for proof that the platform actually worked. His expression hardened as he made his decision. Fix the demo first, he said to me. Then we'll announce the organizational changes we've discussed. To Marcus, he added, you should prepare a statement regarding your future plans. Marcus blanched suddenly, realizing his position was not as secure as he had assumed. You can't seriously be considering keeping her after this stunt. I'm considering what's best for this company's future, the CEO replied firmly. And right now, that means getting our platform functioning properly for the investors who are still waiting. Eloise, are you ready to help us do that? I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of vindication, relief, and lingering uncertainty. The battle wasn't fully won, but for the first time in months, I felt like my contributions might finally be recognized. I'm ready. 20 minutes later, I walked back onto the development floor, escorted by Thomas. A ripple of whispers spread as developers noticed my return. Some looked confused. Others relieved, a few openly delighted. Jamie immediately stood up and crossed the room to greet me. You absolute legend, Jamie whispered, giving me a quick hug. I knew it was you the second I saw that pizza spinning. But I didn't think they'd actually bring you back. It's complicated, I replied, keeping my voice low. But I'm here to fix the demo for now. The rest is still being worked out. The team gathered around as I sat at an open workstation. Thomas explained the situation with careful diplomacy. Eloise has agreed to help us resolve our demonstration issue. Let's give her space to work. I accessed the system using temporary credentials Thomas provided quickly, locating the distributed components of my pizza intervention. I could have removed it completely, but in a small act of continued leverage, I implemented only a partial fix, one that would allow the demo to proceed, but left the underlying structure intact, accessible only to me. It was insurance against any potential backtracking on our agreement once the immediate crisis was resolved. After implementing and testing the fix, I joined Thomas in the hallway outside the presentation room where investors were still waiting, many looking at their phones or talking among themselves with expressions ranging from amusement to irritation. The CEO met us there, his relief visible when Thomas confirmed the system was functioning properly again. "We're ready," Thomas told him. "Eloise has resolved the issue." The CEO straightened his tie and addressed me directly. "I think a slight adjustment to our team presentation is in order." His meaning was clear from his expression, an acknowledgement of our earlier agreement. When we re-entered the presentation room, the audience's attention immediately focused on me, many clearly wondering who I was and why I was suddenly part of the presentation. The CEO stepped to the podium first. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We've resolved our technical issue and are ready to proceed with the demonstration. But first, I'd like to introduce someone important to our team." He gestured toward me. "This is Eloise Bennett, the lead architect of our core prediction algorithm and a key developer of the Algorithm X platform." A murmur ran through the audience. Several investors who had been present at earlier meetings looked confused, clearly trying to reconcile this information with Marcus's previous presentations, where he had claimed primary credit. Marcus stood at the side of the room, his face a rigid mask concealing what I imagined was intense fury. The CEO continued effectively sidelining him without directly addressing the awkward situation. "Eloise will be demonstrating the platform's capabilities to you directly, as no one understands its inner workings better." Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward and took control of the presentation system. "Thank you for your patience. Let me show you what Algorithm X can really do." For the next 30 minutes, I demonstrated the platform I had helped build, explaining its capabilities with the deep knowledge that comes only from intimate involvement in its creation. When investors asked technical questions, I answered with confidence and precision. By the time I finished, the earlier pizza incident had been largely overshadowed by the impressive technology on display. Several investors approached afterward with follow-up questions, addressing them directly to me rather than to the executives hovering nearby. One particularly influential venture capitalist commented, "Quite a recovery. And frankly, the platform is even more impressive than I expected. Your prediction algorithm's accuracy is remarkable." As the event wound down, the CEO pulled me aside. "That went better than I could have hoped, given the circumstances. We'll meet tomorrow morning to finalize your return and discuss next steps regarding Marcus." The following days were a delicate dance of rebuilding trust with my team while navigating the political aftermath of my return. Marcus was conspicuously absent, having been asked to take administrative leave while the company investigated the documentation I had provided. The official explanation to staff was vague, citing organizational restructuring rather than acknowledging the full situation. Jamie and I had lunch off-site the day after my return where we could speak freely. "Many of us wanted to speak up when Marcus started taking credit for your work," Jamie admitted. "But after seeing how effectively he isolated you, we were afraid the same would happen to us. I'm sorry we didn't do more." "It's not your fault," I assured them. "Marcus was skilled at creating division and fear. That's what makes workplace bullies effective. They isolate their targets and make everyone else afraid to become the next one." Within a week, an official announcement went out regarding Marcus's departure from Algorithm X. The carefully worded email from the CEO mentioned pursuing other opportunities without acknowledging any wrongdoing. In the same announcement, my promotion to Director of Engineering was confirmed, giving me authority over the platform's continued development and technical direction. The official product launch proceeded 2 weeks after the pizza incident, this time, without technical difficulties. My name appeared prominently in press releases and media coverage, properly credited as the primary architect of the core algorithm. While some tech blogs made veiled references to the demonstration challenges at the investor preview, the story largely faded from public attention as the actual product impressed reviewers and early customers. The CEO implemented several organizational changes in the aftermath. New policies were established regarding intellectual property attribution, ensuring that all contributors to major features would be properly credited in both internal and external communications. A more robust anti-harassment framework was put in place, with clear reporting channels that couldn't be blocked by a single manager. Anonymous feedback mechanisms were created to flag potential problems before they escalated to the level mine had reached. Despite these positive changes, I experienced mixed feelings about how everything had played out. While I had ultimately achieved recognition for my work and removed a toxic influence from the company, I had crossed ethical lines in the process. Accessing the system after my termination, regardless of the provocation, had been wrong. My pizza intervention, while effective in drawing attention to the situation, had put the entire company at risk, potentially affecting colleagues who had done nothing wrong. In quiet moments, I questioned whether I could have found a better way to address the situation. Could I have documented Marcus's behavior more effectively while still employed? Should I have reached out to the board of directors or other executives before taking matters into my own hands? The answers weren't simple, and I recognized that my actions, while understandable, weren't without consequences. The tech industry had its own response to the situation. Several months after the incident, the full story leaked to a prominent tech blog, though with names changed to protect identities. The article sparked industry-wide conversations about credit theft, workplace bullying, and the unique challenges faced by women in technical roles. I received numerous private messages from others who had experienced similar situations, thanking me for bringing attention to the issue. In response, I began mentoring other women in tech, particularly those in male-dominated specialties like AI development. I shared my experience openly, including the mistakes I had made, hoping others could learn from both my successes and failures. Document everything from day one became my mantra. Build a support network outside your direct reporting line, and know your worth so you can recognize when others are trying to diminish it. My professional reputation within the industry ultimately grew stronger rather than weaker. The Algorithm X platform became a market leader, and my role in its creation opened doors that had previously been closed to me. When I spoke at conferences or participated in industry panels, I was introduced as the architect of one of the most innovative prediction algorithms in consumer AI. Marcus, I later heard, had difficulty finding another executive position in the industry. While nothing had been publicly confirmed, rumors circulated among hiring managers and executive recruiters. Silicon Valley's Whisper network worked both ways, it seemed. The product's success in the marketplace provided its own vindication. User adoption exceeded projections, and the accuracy of our prediction algorithm outperformed competitors just as I had designed it to do. Each positive review and industry award served as confirmation that what I had built was valuable and important, regardless of who had tried to take credit for it. My approach to workplace dynamics changed permanently after the experience. I became more assertive in meetings, more diligent in documenting my contributions, and more strategic about building relationships across the organization, rather than relying on a single reporting chain. I learned to recognize warning signs of credit theft early and address them directly before they could escalate. Most importantly, I discovered that my sense of self-worth couldn't be tied exclusively to external validation or recognition. While I still took pride in my work and expected appropriate credit, I no longer allowed others to determine my value as a developer or as a person. That internal confidence proved more powerful than any title or attribution. The pizza incident, as it became known within the company, took on an almost mythical status among newer employees who joined after everything had settled. It served as a reminder that integrity and attribution mattered, that contributions should be recognized regardless of title or tenure, and that sometimes justice arrives in unexpected packages. Occasionally, at company celebrations, someone would order pizza as a knowing wink to those who understood the reference. Looking back now, I realize that what started as a revenge plan became something more important. A turning point not just for me but for an organizational culture that needed correction. Standing up for yourself and your work isn't always clean or simple, but the alternative, remaining silent while others claim what you've built, exacts a different kind of cost altogether. Have you ever faced a situation where someone tried to take credit for your work? What did you do about it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more tales of workplace justice. Share this with anyone you know who might be dealing with similar challenges, because sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thanks for watching, and remember, in the end, credit does find its way to where it's due, even if sometimes it needs a little help getting there.